I'm joined by Dr Sue Dyson, esteemed vet who specialises in lameness diagnosis and poor performance in horses. The aim of her work is to ensure horses are able to fulfil their athletic potential, whatever their level. Sue has published more than 330 papers in peer-reviewed journals concerning lameness and diagnostic imaging, and she has lectured worldwide. Sue, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's a very real pleasure.
I have heard Sue present many times now. I'm so lucky in that, including at previous Horses Inside Out conferences. And Sue always helps us to truly see horses clearly. And every time I have heard her present, she never fails to deliver clear, useful advice that can be applied to everyday work that we do with horses. So I was so pleased when Sue agreed to present the online seminar for us, recognising pain-related poor performance, on Saturday, the 26th of November. But before we get into details on what you'll be covering, Sue, I'm sure the Horses Inside Out followers would like to know a little bit more about you as an equestrian. Can you tell us more about your journey as a rider and trainer? What are your favourite disciplines, and do you still ride today?
Well, starting backwards, yes, I still do ride today, but not as seriously as I used to. From a very small age, a very young age, I wanted to ride, and I was fortunate to have my own pony fairly early on. And I was driven by wanting to train ponies to be better, and also to compete and be successful, but also wanting to do it in a nice way so that the horses always felt as though they were doing things properly. So I've always been pretty much of a perfectionist. And I was very lucky in that I would buy ponies and produce them with a bit of help, support from my mother. My mother was incredibly supportive of taking me places and enabling me to have help, because I don't think you can do this on your own. So she was a tremendous supporter, although not really a horse person herself. Yes. I was lucky that I would produce ponies and sell them for a bit more money than I paid for them, and therefore was able to progress and go up the ranks, and was lucky enough to compete at JA level show jumping and Pony Club Horse Trials Championships, the whole bit really. I was very much in the Pony Club. And then I bought my first horse, and my first really good horse was a little horse called McGinty, who was bought from an advert in Horse and Hound. He was only 15-1. He'd done nothing except buck people off. But he was tamed and became a grade A show jumper. I jumped to the Horse of the Year show with him. And he also became an advanced event horse, and then became rather valuable, and people wanted to buy him. So I eventually sold him to a young rider, and he won the Junior European Show Jumping Championships twice with two different sisters, which was pretty exciting. Then my next project was really, having graduated as a vet, I went to the United States for 2 years. And on the way before graduating as a vet, I had met Sheila Wilcox at the Pony Club Championships, and she had invited me to work for her. She was a tyrant of a lady, very strict disciplinarian, but I learned a huge amount from her. Got to ride some lovely, lovely young horses, rode horses when she was selling them to the United States. So met Jack Legoff, the American team trainer, and also Bruce Davidson, who was the world champion at that time in horse trials. And in my first job in the United States at New Bolton Centre, who should I meet after a few days but Bruce Davidson? And he recognized me and said, please come and ride my horses. So for the 2 years whilst I was in the United States, I was riding horses for Bruce Davidson, which was a fabulous experience.
Wow.
So I learned a huge amount from that.
Yeah.
While I was there, I also met Dan Marks, who was the American show jumping team vet. And he very much took me under his wing and mentored me and introduced me to amazing horse people like George Morris, who was the American show jumping team trainer. So I got exposed to an enormous number of people who were very influential in my development.
Yeah.
And then I came back, bought another naughty horse. This one reared, would just get stuck in the middle of a field, but put a fence in front of him and he jumped. And that was Kinvara. And he was an advanced event horse by the age of 7. And I sold him very early in his 8-year-old year. And he went to the Seoul Olympics that year with Santiago de la Rocha. And that's one of the most exciting times in my life, watching television at 3 o'clock in the morning, whilst I was at the British Equine Veterinary Association Congress, watching Kinvara jump a clear round at the Seoul Olympics. And Lucinda Green was commentating, and she knew me and said this horse was produced by equine vet Sue Dyson, and I was just so excited by this. It was amazing, absolutely amazing.
I can imagine, yeah. Fantastic, brilliant. Well, actually just picking up on, so you've had some naughty horses in your time with bucking ponies and a rearing advanced event horse, or that turned into. But if we talk about behaviour, because actually on the course, you're going to be presenting 3 one-hour-long presentations, and there'll be loads of opportunity to ask questions and interact through the seminar. And one of your talks is how do horses adapt their behaviour in the face of musculoskeletal pain? And because pain can often lead to bad behaviour, but so can many other factors, like the bucking, and then they get a release of pressure when the rider falls off. Those ponies learn quite quickly, don't they, that they buck and the little jockey falls off. But are there any specific markers that you can look for that can tell if a behaviour, like your bucking or rearing, is caused by pain, a specific pain in a specific area, or if it's training, tack, or something else related? Would this be something you'll look at on the course?
We'll most definitely be discussing this on the course. The basic bottom line message is that if there's just one behaviour, bucking for example, or just rearing, and absolutely nothing else, the horse is otherwise compliant, willing, looks happy, has a nice facial expression, has its ears forward, doesn't swish its tail repeatedly. So if it's just one behavior, then it's probably related to a training problem, or it is a learned behavior and the horse has become aware that it can stop work by not doing whatever you wanted it to do.
Yes.
But if there are multiple behaviors, so if the rearing is combined with spooking, unwillingness to go forwards freely, constantly swishing the tail, putting its ears back, opening its mouth, then it's much more likely to be an underlying pain-related problem. Now, it's not specific for the source of pain, and there are various factors that may be involved. The horse may itself be experiencing musculoskeletal pain because of a primary injury, or it may be related to saddle fit, or it may be related to the saddle fit for the rider and therefore the rider's position and their weight distribution. So that it's multifactorial, and in some instances more than one factor is actually involved in a single horse. So it might be that it has some musculoskeletal pain plus the saddle is inducing further discomfort. But the bottom line is, one behavior only, it's probably a training related problem that may have been initiated by pain but has persisted.
Yes.
And then it's a matter of finding the way to work with that horse so that it becomes more compliant.
Yes.
I don't want to use the word submissive. I think it's compliance. So it's going to be working with you, not against you.
Yes, that's the challenge, isn't it? Okay, so another one of the talks you're going to be presenting is how to recognise low-grade lameness. Now, this seminar is aimed at, it's just for equestrian professionals. So it'll be perfect for coaches, therapists, veterinary paraprofessionals. And these professionals often see horses on a regular basis, maybe more often than their vet would see them. And at Horses Inside Out, we are all about the team maintaining open communication. But how much responsibility do you think lies with coaches, therapists, farriers, people that are seeing horses on a regular basis to recognise low-grade lameness and to recommend to horse owners when the horse should be seen by the vet? Because it's a challenging thing to recognise anyway, isn't it? But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think through personal observation of many, many horses, and horses in competition, as well as those that have been come to me for veterinary investigation, there are a lot of problems that are labelled as training related problems, which are in fact a reflection of the horse being in discomfort. It may not show an overt lameness in the traditional sense of the word, a one-legged lameness, but the horse may just lack hind limb push. But it lacks hind limb push because it's uncomfortable when it's pushing.
Yes.
And then the horse is not performing optimally. And I think if you're seeing the horse on a very regular basis and you've never seen it move better, there is the kind of acceptance that that is normal for that horse. But I think if you look more closely at these horses and you look at their behaviour when ridden, you will become aware that in fact they're not behaving normally. They are not responding to the rider's cues as a normal pain-free horse should. So it's all linked, this behaviour aspect and performance. And I think it's a big step to say that we think your horse has got something wrong. And it's also a big step to ask the general purpose equine vet to investigate it, because they don't necessarily have the skills to do so. So if you were a human athlete with a performance related problem, you probably would not go to your local doctor. You would seek the advice of a specialist sports medicine person, or a physiotherapist, or even a sports medicine psychologist. But you probably wouldn't go to your local GP. And I think the same applies for the horse. If a trainer perceives there may be an underlying pain-related problem, I think that the horse has got to be investigated by somebody who has the appropriate skills to do that. Somebody who themselves understand how horses adapt when they're ridden. Because so many of these horses, if you just watch them trot up and down in straight lines, do not show overt lameness in the conventional sense. And even if you see them on the lunge, they may not show lameness. It's conceivable that if they were lunged on a firm surface, they may show a low-grade forelimb lameness, but that's not necessarily the underlying problem of the horse being when it's ridden. So in fact, that investigation may be a little bit misleading. So to me, if you've got a rider-related or a problem recognized when the horse is being ridden, from a veterinary perspective, for me, it is absolutely essential to see that horse ridden and to investigate it and improve its movement through nerve blocks whilst being ridden, so that we really get to understand what the underlying problem or problems are.
Yes, because that's key, really, isn't it? In knowing the exact area where it's coming, where the problem is coming from, to be able to help it.
Yes, I mean, without knowing where the pain is coming from, you can't establish what the cause of that pain is. So you can't have a targeted management program.
Yes.
Now, the management program is going to be multifaceted because it's going to involve me as the veterinarian doing what I can do, but probably working together with a physiotherapist for rehabilitation purposes, and sometimes the farrier and the saddle fitter as well.
Yes. Yeah.
So a team effort to maximise performance.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I know from hearing you present before, talking about assessing horses, that there's going to be lots of top tips for what to look for, because you have a very clear approach. So there'll be markers there that will help professionals to say, well, actually, this horse isn't quite right. And hey, isn't that a phrase that we hear a lot of? We hear people saying, my horse is just not quite right. He's not lame, but he's just not quite right. And what can I do about that? And in my experience as a therapist and working with lots of different horses, invariably there is a low grade level of lameness there that they perhaps haven't, that the horse owner hasn't recognised. So if there's something there, then if there's a question of it being not quite right, then probably there is more than we think.
Yes, and I think it's important to identify that, because if it persists, the horse is likely to develop secondary adaptations in the way in which it moves, and that will alter its muscle development, and it will change neuromuscular pathways as well. So you will be going through a slowly downward spiral in performance in all likelihood. Whereas if you address the problem early, you bullet, and said, I accept that my horse has got a problem, there is a better potential that we can treat it earlier and prevent those secondary problems. And also by facilitating the horse moving more normally, it can be developing the appropriate muscular strength and coordination that it needs to support itself doing whatever you're asking it to do.
Yes, yeah. Oh, fascinating. Oh, I'm so looking forward to the course. It's going to be wonderful. Now, the last presentation that you'll be doing in the seminar, you'll be looking at whether we have the evidence to support use of horses in competition. Now, you've ridden to a very high level and competed lots of horses. I've competed horses to a high level and done a lot with them. Do we need evidence to support that we can use horses in competition? Is that a need, do you think?
I think it is, because I think that this term social license, which involves whether or not it is acceptable within the general community to use horses, is something that's becoming much more talked about. And we saw with the very unfortunate Mark Todd debacle that the general public is becoming progressively unacceptant of coercive types of training. And we have to accept that we all know as horse people that horses get hit, and sometimes they need to be hit. But I think we have to be very careful about the overall appearance of our sport. We saw what happened at the Olympics in the modern pentathlon. We had a court case with a dressage rider when an animal welfare organisation sued the rider for excessive use of roll curve. We've had high-profile dressage rider in South America banned for the way in which he was riding his daughter's pony. They've had a case of electric spur use in the United States, and the rider getting banned by the FEI. And all this results in publicity, and that's not good publicity.
No, no.
And with the increasing use of social media and the way in which things can spread around the world so rapidly, I think we have to be proactive in protecting our sports. So I think we need to have evidence to say, yes, the majority of horses in X or Y competition are comfortable, and it is reasonable that we're using them in this way.
Yeah.
I'm the first to say that some of our top competition horses are absolutely mollycoddles, and they have fantastic lives and looked after very, very carefully. But you also have to realize that those horses are spending a lot of time traveling, and you have to defend why they are living as individuals, not as part of a herd. And there are all sorts of things that we have to think about in order to proactively defend our use of horses. Yes. I think we can do, but I think we have to be very cognizant of the need, and to do this before welfare groups try to squash what we do.
Yeah, so it's protecting it and looking at the positive side, which I think is fantastic. So thank you so much for joining me. As always, it's been fascinating chatting to you. To book onto Sue's online seminar, Recognising Pain-Related Poor Performance, on Saturday, the 26th of November, just head to the Horses Inside Out website. Personally, I am looking forward to this fantastic opportunity to learn more about recognising low-grade lameness and improving my skills in assessing horses. And I know many of the Horses Inside Out followers will be too. So Sue, thank you again, and I will see you in November.
Bye-bye.